on. It is here at Glen.
Yep.
Australian merchant seafarers,
Yep.
serving the nation in war and peace.
That's right.
Exactly right.
Alan Oliver.
Alan Oliver, well-known seaman.
Yep.
G'day comrades. Jimmy Donovan here, the ex-secretary of the Sydney branch of the WWF and the MUA, and I'm now the National Secretary of the Retired Veterans Association. Look, we're here today to get the film unit to do something for the history, the 150th anniversary of our union, which hasn't been done before at this very, very special spot. And I'll explain it. Some years ago, Johnny Gallagher, who was an ex-Tally Clark supervisor, worked at the ANL, approached Glen about having a memorial here for the Australian seamen, and also in recognition of the Darwin bombing. And so Glen saw Paddy Crumlin about 10 or 12 years ago, and as a result of that, here is this beautiful memorial to the Australian seamen, mainly the Australian seamen, who lost their lives off the Australian coast. Now let me tell you a bit of a story. You know, the officials' Secrets Act didn't allow one iota of publication of ships being sunk along the Australian coast. But you know, there are in excess of 40 ships that were sunk, and a lot of them had Australian seamen on them. And in fact, 1/8 of the Australian seamen at that period of time lost their lives along the Australian coast, and the ships that weren't sunk, they were taken prisoners of war and put in Japanese camps. And we all know how horrific they were. Even though it's a tragedy, but we need to celebrate the wonderful efforts. I have in the Sydney branch office, and I had a look at it the other day, in 1964, there is this beautiful caption, "Seamen for Peace." Now, and that was in 64, but prior to that, of course, they're always interested in peace. And in fact, the Australian seamen backed up the wharfies in the Dulfin dispute in Port Kembla, where they refused to load pig iron to Japan, knowing full well it would come back in bullets and bombs, and didn't it ever. The union coined the phrase, "no scrap for the Jap." Now that was in 1937, and because we knew again that it was going to come back in bombs and bullets. And it did in Darwin in 1942, in February 1942. And in excess of 300 lives were lost, and of those in excess of 300, 21 wharfies were killed at work, unloading and loading the ships that were needed to get the cargoes and all the equipment to our soldiers fighting overseas. And, you know, so we predicted, well, I didn't predict, but the union predicted that it would come back and haunt us if we didn't take the action we did in 1937 and 1938 in the Dalfram in Kembla. And let me add this to you. You know, Menzies turned up as the Attorney General, and he said, "We won't have wharfies determining Australian foreign policy." Well, maybe the wharfies should have been determining foreign policy, because what we were saying in that period of time turned out to be absolutely correct, 100%. And of course, Lyons, the Prime Minister at that period of time, backed up Menzies. He went to Kembla, and there was a woman apparently yelled out, "Here's Pig Iron Bob!" And that was the coin that Menzies got all of his life from there on, Pig Iron Bob. And so these lives were lost unnecessarily. Even the thought of war and what's happening in the world today. I read just recently about the wars that have been happening for the last 500 years. And do you know what? There is not one single period in all of that time without a war somewhere on this planet. Someone trying to determine the life of other people for their own political, if financial gain. And so this memorial that's here today, we're coming to see today, I hope that a lot of seamen and wharfies will come over and visit it, because it's worthwhile, because of the contribution that we made, workers, seamen, wharfies made during the Second World War. And let me tell you, it was strong. You know, why wouldn't the seamen, anybody, everybody, call for peace action? And that's exactly what the union and the MUA, prior to the formation of the MUA, the WWF and the SUA, were great on the question of peace. Because, and I don't know where it came from, but peace is union business.
I want to thank Paddy Crumlin for the work he done in getting this established and the work that's gone on. I encourage all members of the MUA and their families and anybody else who would like to come down to Port North on North Head here in Sydney and look at the dedication to the seafarers and wharfies in this 150th year anniversary of the Union.
It's the 150th anniversary of our magnificent Union. And let me tell you, there's not going to be a stone unturned that will ensure that this will be a great year of celebration.